Your fish finder's fish icons are lying to you. That cartoon fish is number 8 on a list of 8 things hiding real fish from your screen, and not one of them is a hardware problem. I've pulled the back off enough of these units to promise you the marks are down there. You just told the machine to paint over them. Every major brand ships this way. The same screen that boots up under the Garmin badge, or the Lowrance badge, or the Humminbird badge, comes tuned for a bright showroom, not for the water under your hull. And the moment you struggle to read it, somebody at the counter points you toward a $6,000 upgrade. But the thing stealing your fish was never the price tag. It's 8 settings you can change for free, right now, on the unit already screwed to your dash. By the end you'll know the 8 settings quietly costing you fish, the 5-minute fix that outmarks a brand new unit, and the one upgrade that's actually worth your money. So, number 8. The fish symbols. You've trusted those little icons since the day you switched the thing on, because that is literally what they look like they're for. But those icons aren't fish, they're a guess. The unit grabs a raw echo, runs it through an algorithm, and decides whether to stamp a tidy fish shape on top of it. And that algorithm gets fooled all day long, by a stream of air bubbles, by your own prop wash, by a clump of weed drifting through the cone. So you idle over a screen full of cartoon fish, drop down with total confidence, and come up with nothing, because half those fish were never alive. I watched a guy do exactly this on a lake last spring, dead certain he was parked on a school, and the man was sitting over bubbles. Turn Fish ID off. Leave it off forever. Read the raw returns underneath it, the arches and the marks and the dashes, and you'll finally see what that happy little icon was busy hiding. Costs you nothing, and it's the single biggest lie on the glass. Number 7 is the setting that brings back everything Fish ID was painting over. Sensitivity. Some brands call it gain. And here's what almost nobody at the shop bothers to explain. Gain has nothing to do with power. It does not make your sonar punch deeper or ping harder. All it decides is how many of the returning echoes actually get drawn on your screen. Turn it down, and you filter out the weak stuff, and the weak stuff includes bait and the smaller fish you're hunting. Turn it up, and more appears. But push it too far, and the whole screen snows over with static and phantom marks that were never there. And that is the trap most people are stuck inside. The technicians at one marine electronics shop put a hard number on it. 99% of the false fish complaints they field trace back to one thing. Sensitivity cranked up to 80, 90, 100%. In most cases, they said, way too high. So the fix is a feel, not a magic number off a forum. Set your range to about twice the depth you're sitting in, then raise the gain slowly until a faint second copy of the bottom appears underneath the real one, like a ghost echo. Then back it down a hair. That second bottom is your proof you're seeing everything the water has to give, without inventing fish that don't exist. Number 6. Frequency. And this is where one word starts to matter. Transducer. So hang on to it, because it comes back hard at number 1, and it changes the whole story. Your unit fires sound at a frequency, and most people leave it on whatever the box defaulted to and never open that menu again. But frequency is a trade, not a ladder where higher is always better. A high frequency, say 200 kilohertz, fires a narrow, tight cone. You get beautiful detail and sharp separation between targets, but it gives out in deep water. A low frequency, like 50 kilohertz, throws a wide cone that reaches far deeper, but the detail goes soft. Lowrance's own guidance is refreshingly blunt about it. Run 200 kilohertz down to about 200 feet, then drop to 50 when you want to look deeper than that. And if your unit has CHIRP, turn it on and actually use it. Instead of firing one single frequency, CHIRP sweeps across a whole band of them in a single ping. Simrad describes the payoff in their own documents. You go from seeing one fat, undefined blob to resolving the individual fish stacked inside a school, with separation measured in inches instead of several feet. So those fish were piled up the whole time. Your single frequency was just smearing them into one smudge, and you were calling it a rock. And the same exact trade runs straight through your imaging too. Side imaging down around 455 kilohertz sweeps a wide stretch of ground for you. Lots of coverage. Push it up to 800 kilohertz or mega, and the picture turns razor sharp, but the range shrinks fast and the deep stuff just falls away. So the rule holds everywhere on the unit. Detail and distance are always pulling against each other. And the angler who knows which one he actually needs right now is the one reading water the rest of the ramp can't. Number 5. And I want you to watch a pattern start to form here. Chart speed and the clean up filters. Your screen scrolls right to left, and that scroll speed is meant to match how fast your boat is moving. Set it too fast, and a single fish gets stretched into a long smear you'd never recognize as a fish. Set it too slow, and that same fish collapses into a fat, meaningless blob. Match it to your speed, or honestly just set it to auto and let the unit read your GPS and do it for you. Then come the filters. Noise rejection, interference rejection, surface clutter. People crank all of these to get a nice clean picture, and I get it. Clutter looks like a malfunction you want gone. But Furuno says it flat out in their own manual. Use interference rejection sparingly, or you will eliminate small targets. Read that one twice. The spotless screen you're so proud of just quietly deleted the bait and the small fish you drove all the way out here to find. Now pull back and look at all 4 of these together. Fish ID, gain, frequency, chart speed. Not one of them is a broken part. Not one of them costs a single dollar. Every fish you've been missing was hidden by a menu, not by a malfunction. Number 4 is the one that makes good anglers feel like they're going crazy. Arches. Everybody's chasing that perfect rainbow arch. And when they don't see one, they decide there's nothing down there. But an arch is not what a fish looks like. An arch is what movement looks like. Picture your sonar cone as an upside-down ice cream cone hanging under the boat. As you move forward, a fish enters the far edge of that cone, which reads as deeper and weaker, then passes through the dead center, close and strong. Then slides out the far edge again. Far, near far, that arc is what paints the arch. So here's the part that should change how you fish tomorrow. If you are sitting dead still, anchored up or vertical jigging, a fish holding right under you cannot draw an arch, because nothing is moving through the cone. It draws a flat horizontal line instead. A dash. And every one of those flat dashes you've been waving off while jigging was a fish sitting inches from your bait. The arch was never the proof of a fish. It was just the signature of a moving boat. Number 3, and this one's quick, but it is a myth that costs people fish all day long. A bigger arch is not a bigger fish. The thickness of a mark comes from how hard it bounces the sound back to you, and most of that bounce comes off the gas inside the fish's swim bladder, not off its length. And the length of the arch? That's just how long the fish happened to sit inside your beam, which depends on your speed and its speed, not on the size of the animal. So a slow, fat channel cat and a quick little bluegill can leave marks that fool you completely. And here's the kicker that proves the whole thing. A shark or a ray has no swim bladder at all, so a genuinely huge fish can barely register on the glass. Read thickness as a rough strength cue if you like, your call. But the second you start measuring your fish by the size of the arch, the screen is lying straight to your face again. Number 2, telling bait, structure, and the water itself apart, because this is where the screen fakes you out the hardest. Baitfish show up as clouds, as balls, as tall columns, a dense knot of bright color wrapped in a softer halo. And when one of those bait balls looks splintered, blown open, ragged at the edges, that is not interference. That is a predator tearing through it, which means you didn't just find the food, you found the table. Now that long flat band stretching the entire width of your screen at one steady depth. People swear up and down it's a massive school, but it almost never is. That's the thermocline, the layer where the water temperature breaks hard, and here's a tell that loops you right back to number 7. If you can't even see that band until you turn your gain up, then your gain has been set too low this entire time, and the bottom itself will lie to you too. You'd swear a thick, fat bottom line means hard ground. It's often the exact opposite. Soft mud scatters the signal and reads thick and fuzzy, while genuinely hard rock reads as a thin, bright, intense line with a second echo bouncing along underneath it. So judge your bottom by color and that second return, never, ever, by how big the line looks. And the same color logic sorts out your cover. Brush, timber, and rock Don't sit on the bottom in the same shade your fish do. Learn the palette on your own unit. Hard returns running hot, soft returns running cold. And a stump pile stops looking like a school and starts looking like exactly what it is, an ambush spot with something living tucked into it. And number 1, the most expensive lie of the whole list, and the one the industry would honestly rather you never put together. I told you to hang on to that word. Transducer. Here's why it matters. The part that does the actual work on your fish finder, the piece bolted to your hull that fires the sound out and listens for it coming back. On most traditional units, it is not even built by the company whose name is on the front of the screen. One outfit up in New Hampshire, Airmar, supplies the transducers sitting behind Garmin, behind Lowrance, behind Humminbird, Simrad, Raymarine, Furuno. And they will tell you so themselves. It's printed right on their own website. So picture 2 units sitting on the same shelf, 2 different badges, 2 very different price tags, and very often the exact same family of transducer firing underneath both of them. Which means the screen you carry home is decided mostly by how well you set it up, not by the logo you paid a premium for. And which transducer actually cross-fits which unit, which brands force the upgrade cycle on you, that's a rabbit hole all its own. The one I keep the most notes on. Now I'm going to be straight with you, because I know this audience checks every single word. This is not true of the live, forward-facing sonar, the live scope, the active target, the mega live units. Those run proprietary, in-house transducers, and Garmin's own product announcement says plainly that live scope is a phased array design they engineered themselves. So no, it is not all the identical box inside, and anyone who tells you it is overselling it. But for the regular sonar that most of us actually fish with, day in and day out, a well-tuned mid-priced unit will outfish an expensive one left sitting on factory settings, every single day of the week. So let me be clear about why I just dragged you through all 8 of those. The point was never to make you paranoid about the electronics on your own boat. It is the exact opposite. It's to hand you back the screen you already paid good money for. Because every single thing on that list has a fix, and very nearly all of them are free. So here is exactly what to do in order the next time you idle out. First, turn Fish ID off and leave it off. Read the raw arches and the dashes underneath it. And I'll be honest with you, it's going to feel worse for the first trip or 2, because raw sonar looks messier than a screen full of tidy cartoons. Push through it anyway. By the 3rd trip, you will not go back, and you'll be marking the bait those icons were quietly erasing. Second, dial your gain in by feel, not by some number you copied off a forum. Range to twice your depth, raise the sensitivity until that faint second bottom shows up, then ease it back down a touch. The honest caveat: you have to redo this every time your depth, your speed, or your target species changes. But it's 30 seconds of work. And it is the 30 seconds that uncovers more fish than anything on the upgrade shelf. Third, match your frequency to the job in front of you. High and narrow, your 200 kilohertz or your CHIRP high, when you're studying fish tucked tight to cover. Low and wide, your 50 or 83 kilohertz when you're searching a lot of deep water fast. Got side imaging? 455 kilohertz to sweep ground, 800 or mega to zoom in close. Just respect the honest limit. That ultra-high detail falls apart past roughly 125 feet, so don't go expecting miracles down deep. Fourth, set your chart speed to auto and back those filters off. Yes, the screen will look a little busier. That little bit of clutter is the receipt that proves you are not deleting the small marks. A perfectly spotless screen is almost always a screen that's hiding something from you. Fifth, learn the bottom and the thermocline read until it's second nature. Judge hardness by hot color and a second echo, not by thickness. Clock that flat band for what it really is, the temperature break. Then go fish the bait and the structure that actually touches it. This one's the exception. There's no menu setting for it. It just takes time on the water. And only after every bit of that, we talk gear. If you are genuinely itching to spend money, here's where I'd spend it, in order. Before you buy a whole new head unit, try a better transducer on the display you already own. It is very often a bigger leap in what you actually see than a brand new screen, for a small fraction of the price. Buying fresh instead? A mid-tier unit with CHIRP, Down imaging and side imaging covers the overwhelming majority of anglers, and I'd put my own money right there before chasing a flagship. And then the live, forward-facing sonar, the live scope and its rivals. I'll give it to you straight, no spin. It is real. It genuinely shows you the fish and your own lure moving in real time, and plain 2D sonar simply cannot do that. But it is not a magic wand either. It's locked to its own brand ecosystem, it's power-hungry, it wants its own dedicated battery, and it carries a brutal learning curve that humbles people for a full season. And people caught plenty of fish for decades before it ever shipped, back in 2018. So here's my honest verdict. The one the hook promised you. If you are already fluent on 2D, and you keep marking fish you just cannot get to bite, then yes, forward-facing is a genuine jump in capability, and it's worth the money. But if you still can't tune your own gain or pick out a thermocline, then spend that money on time on the water instead of on hardware. The settings beat the upgrade. That has been the whole game from the start. And if you want the one honest test for whether forward-facing is really for you, it's this. If you're consistently marking fish on plain sonar that you simply cannot get to bite, the live view earns its keep. But if you're not even sure what you're marking yet, that money belongs in the gas tank, not the electronics budget. So the one thing to carry off this video, your fish were never actually hiding. The marks were on that screen the entire time. You just handed the machine permission to draw over them, smooth them out, and filter them away, all in the name of a clean, simple showroom picture. Take that permission back. Read the raw screen, trust the flat dashes, respect the thermocline, and stop paying a premium for a logo when the real upgrade is 30 seconds inside a settings menu. You already own the unit that catches more fish. You just have to let it show you. Nobody sponsors me and no dealer cuts me a check, which is why the Marine Electronics Survival Guide is mine to give you. It picks up right where this stops. Which transducers cross-fit, which units, which brands force the upgrade cycle. Today's settings are free either way, but the link's below if you want the rest. Right next to this one. There's a breakdown of the cheap transducer swap that quietly outfishes a brand new display, the upgrade nobody at the counter ever wants to sell you. YouTube thinks you'll like one of the two videos on your screen right now, so click one. And if you made it all the way to the end here, subscribe, because those fish were never hiding. You just couldn't see them yet.